Planning your Othello essay takes a bit of thought and careful planning. It's not something that you can just write from the top of your head. There are a whole lot of things that you have to include. So we've been looking at the ideas of why transformation is necessary and how it's not a lazy activity and what benefits there are for the modern society. So what you have to do is you have to come up with two clear ideas that you want to talk about, and then you've got to tie them to a character. Generally speaking, you'll use one character and you'll show how they exhibit that idea in the play, and then you'll look at the similarities and differences that are presented in that same character, the transformed character for the film. Um, Once you've done that, you're going to try and find a quote or two quotes that are going to support what you're saying. So one quote definitely from the play and then one from the film. And then what you'll try and do is flesh that out with um, features of the form. So it might be that in the play you find a quote for Desdemona and you highlight that it's an example of dramatic irony or animal imagery, or it might have some link to Christian belief in divinity or something like that. And then what you'll do is, so you're talking about the techniques of the play, then what you'll do is look at the same sort of idea for Desi in the film, and you'll see if you can show how that's done. You'll present the quote, but explore how the film has used the techniques of film to convey that message. So you've got an idea, you're talking about character and the quotes from the play, and you're making statements about how it was relevant to the 1600s and how it was relevant to the modern day. So you're talking about context. So they're the three big things: ideas, character, quotations, and then context. You've got to work all those things into your body paragraphs. So if you were going to use the idea of characterization and say that Sachs has transformed Iago's character because society has changed and the ideas have changed, this might be a way of you going about it. So your topic sentence has to have a clear idea, and so we're using the technique or the form aspect of form of characterization, and so that's the central focus of our topic sentence. So that the characterization of Iago provides great insight into the changing worlds of the two texts. Okay, Iago is seen in the Elizabethan era as an agent of the devil. And Shakespeare establishes this through black and white imagery. So when Iago states, "I will turn her virtue into pitch," he draws on the notions of good and evil to highlight his determination to ruin Desdemona and Othello. Now, Shakespeare employs soliloquies as a means of allowing the audience to gain insight into Iago's motivations. So when he states, "I am not what I am," he directly tells the audience of his appearance of loyalty and that it's false. He only does so to serve my turn upon him. And despite his honesty to us, he deceives everyone in the play. Geoffrey Sachs skillfully transforms Iago's character to reflect the values of a modern society. Okay, notice I'm using the word skillfully there. So to what extent do you agree? Well, I'm saying that I disagree with it, and he's very skillful in it. It's not lazy, there's a lot of skill involved. So he skillfully transforms Iago's character to reflect the values of a modern society. Benjago is represented as a sociopath rather than a devil, and he's intent on claiming the job he knows he deserves. Sachs utilises black and white imagery visually to engage with the modern audience. Shots such as the bathroom scene show black and white floors, which highlights the conflict between white power and affirmative action. Jago's congratulation, "You clever black bastard," emphasises his racist views towards Othello, and this is reinforced by the cut shot of Jago posting on a neo-Nazi website. Similar to soliloquy, Jago breaks the fourth wall and speaks directly to camera to vent his anger. When he states it's all going to end in broken hearts, cheer up, we become an accomplice to his mischief. Now this scene is strengthened by cut shots, undershots and spinning shots that tell of Jago's internalised rage. Therefore, the film adaptation extends a modern audience's understanding of the story of Othello. It is not lazy, instead it is an act of brilliance. And once again, I'm saying that it has no relevance to society. It does. It's an act. It's a brilliant act. It's very clever. It's very relevant. So that's one approach that you can take. And you'll notice that what I've done is I've gone through and I've talked about the character up here, and then what I've done is I've made a point about it. I've talked about how black and white imagery was used in the play, and now it's presented in the film as well. I've supported that with a quote, and I've explained that it highlights the racism. And then I move into the techniques of form, of the techniques of film. I talk about that breaking of the fourth wall, which is actually a dramatic technique, but it suits film perfectly. I use that quote, I explain it, and I talk about how that scene is shown or how it's shot to make it visually interesting and relevant. Okay, and at the end of my point, I bring my idea and I bring my argument back to the question. Okay, he extends the audience's understanding of the story of Othello, and I directly signpost the word lazy here to make sure that the mark is clear that I'm engaging with the question, and then I give my opinion on that. Now, another thing that we can do is we can take it from the idea of context and talk about the changing societal values. So the act of transformation is necessary because the values of society have changed. So my topic sentence could be, because the Elizabethan era and our world are completely different, Sachs reshapes the play to provide greater relevance to a modern audience. Now, Shakespeare's world was governed by a patriarchal order. The balance of the universe is upset because Othello marries Desdemona without the consent of Brabantio. Desdemona's character is passive and subservient to Othello. She tells her father, "To you I am bound, but he is my husband," which outlines her duty to both men in her life. To protect Othello, she dutifully states, nobody, I myself, when asked who has murdered her. And this reflects the social structure and values of the 1600s. Now, Sachs modifies Desi's character to reflect modern women. While we still live in a patriarchal world, Desi is represented as independent and strong. And Desi firmly rejects Cass's kiss, which highlights her control and also her love for John. She does, however, tell John, "I was like a blank sheet waiting for you to write on it." And this simile and direct link to Desdemona's subservience suggests that there is still a gender inequity today. Sachs also omits Brabantio from his film because his function in the play is obsolete. It is not required these days to ask for permission to marry a daughter. Therefore, he is removed. As a result of the changing societal values, Sachs cleverly adapts the character of Desi to be of benefit to a modern audience. So once again, I'm establishing the same structure. I've talked in the slide back like this. I've talked in the opening of the paragraph. I've had a clear idea here that I'm talking about context, but it's about the greater. I'm talking about the changing of the context. Sachs has to reshape that. The main idea I introduce here is that the play presented a patriarchal society. I support that with a bit more evidence of the context of the era by talking about the balance of the universe. And then what I do is I provide some quotes here to support what I'm saying. I then come along and I talk about why Sachs or how Sachs does it. I talk about Desi and how she's represented by Sachs and why. I give an example. I then talk about the simile that's used to reinforce that there is still sexism evident in society, inequality. And then I talk about Brabantia. I give another example of it, and I explain why he's not needed due to context. Okay. From there, what I do is I come back, and you'll notice that in this paragraph, or in this concluding sentence, this clincher, what I've done is I've highlighted the idea of my paragraph again, and then what I do is I signpost the words to be of benefit, because that comes from the question as well, just so that the marker knows I'm clearly engaging with the question. So that's really the process in which you have to go through to be able to write a good essay. There's no real way that you can be thinking about all these ideas and coming up with examples, etc., and be trying to write a fluent essay at the same time. So if you plan in the first instance, it will make the writing of it so much easier because you've got all the ideas there. Then you can really focus on your written expression, the level of sophistication of your language, and that you're able to make sure you're following that TEE model where you're introducing a quote and you're analysing it rather than describing what's happening.